In the previous lecture, we have already seen the parts of the respiratory system, and in this lecture, we are going to see the mechanism of respiration, how the respiration occurs. Now, respiration is a biological process in which there is exchange of gases takes place between the environment and the lungs, okay, and it results into the formation of ATP. Okay, generally we know that what is respiration? We are taking air inside and we are releasing CO2 outside. Okay, just take air inside and release CO2 outside. This is, we call it as respiration. Okay, it looks very simple from outside, but for that process, for that inhalation and exhalation, or inspiration and expiration, whatever the mechanisms are done in our body, that we are going to study. Generally, this respiration is completed within the 4 steps. Okay, these are nothing but breathing, external respiration, internal respiration, and cellular respiration. We are going to see each one of them in separate manner. Okay, so starting with the respiration, okay, simple phenomena, taking air in and releasing CO2 outside. This is a very simple phenomena, but it starts with the breathing. Okay, now what is the meaning of breathing? Okay, taking in and taking out, this process is called as the breathing. So breathing, it is a physical process in which there is an exchange of gases takes place between the environment and the lungs. Okay, here also the exchange of gas takes place between the external environment or air and the lungs. Okay, generally this breathing involves 2 of the processes. One is the inspiration and other one is the expiration. And one inspiration, that means taking air inside, and expiration means taking out CO2. So one inspiration and one expiration both will make and one breath. Okay, one breath. When taking air in, releasing CO2 out, this is the one breath. Okay, and in normal human, in 1 minute the respiratory rate is 12 to 20 breath. Okay, a normal person can breathe 12 to 20 times in resting stage. Okay, resting stage. Okay, I am talking about resting stage. If this breathing rate is below 12 or above 25, then that person is called as abnormal respiratory, are having abnormal respiratory system. Okay, remember that 12 to 20 is the normal respiratory rate a person at the resting stage, and if this rate is below 12 or above 25, then it is called as abnormal respiratory system or abnormal respiration. So we are going to see the inspiration and expiration. For that, on your screen there is one picture of breathing. On that one side there is an inspiration and on the another side there is expiration. We can make some of the differences within them, okay, in this structure only, and then we are going to see actually the inspiration and expiration. You can see there is a structure of the respiratory system, inspiration and expiration. Inspiration means breathing in, and expiration means breathing out. Okay, a major difference is that you can see in the inspiration the volume of the lung and the ribs. Okay, and in the expiration the volume of lungs and ribs. The volume of lung in the expiration is more than that of the volume of lung in the expiration. So this is the major difference. That means the volume of lung is going to increase in the inspiration, and the volume of the lung, it is going to decrease in the expiration. This is the one simple difference. After that, second difference is the diaphragm, structure of diaphragm. In the inspiration, the diaphragm, it is going to be flattened and it is going to be compressed and going downward. It becomes flattened and goes downward in inspiration. And in the expiration, the diaphragm, it is going upward and it expands. Okay, you can see the difference of the diaphragm. Okay, diaphragm is expanded in expiration and diaphragm is compressed and flattened in the inspiration. So these are the major two differences in the inspiration and expiration. So what we can suggest from that structure, that the pressure on the lungs is less in the inspiration and it is more in the expiration, and the pressure on the diaphragm, it is more in the inspiration and pressure on the diaphragm is less in the expiration. So it is a vice versa. If diaphragm is expanded, then the lungs are going to be compressed, and if lungs are expanded, then diaphragm is going to be compressed. So this is a vice versa process. Now coming to the inspiration and expiration. Okay, first we will see the inspiration. What is inspiration? Inspiration, taking air in. This process is called as the inspiration. Now simply it looks very simple that I am taking air in, that's all. But inside our body, in the lungs and in the thoracic, what will happen? That is called as the inspiration. Okay, that we are going to see. When we are taking air inside, at the same time what happens inside the body? As according to that structure, we have seen this structure. And you can apply it on you. After this video lecture series, you can apply it on you so you can feel it. Okay, so when we are taking air in, at that time the thoracic cavity, it is going to be expand. Okay, your chest is become large, and what happens, there is a diaphragm, it is going to be downward. When diaphragm is going to be downward, okay, that means there is a space remaining. Okay, the pressure is going to be released from the lung. When it goes downward, there is a more space to expand for the lungs. Okay, and when the diaphragm goes downward and the external intercostal muscles on the ribs, it is going to be compressed. That means they are pulling the ribs outward. So you can see that when you are inspiring, the chest is going to be up and forward. Okay, up and forward. That means it creates some cavity inside that thoracic region. Okay, diaphragm goes downward, ribs are coming up and forward. So it will make an thoracic cavity, volume of thoracic cavity increases. That will resulting into the expanding of the lungs. So there is a less pressure on the lungs, so that it goes to relax and it goes expand. Okay, so what happens? Due to that, there is a more area in the lungs is present and pressure is low. Now the pressure in the environment, it is more, and the pressure in the lungs, it is very less. So to equalize that pressure, the more air it is entered into the lungs. So gases always travels from higher pressure to the lower pressure, from outside to inside the lung, and this is called as inspiration. Similarly, for example, when we are putting air into the balloons, okay, before we are putting air into the balloons, it becomes compressed because the external pressure is more. Okay, but when we are putting air inside it, it becomes expanded. Such type of conditions it occurs into the lungs. When we are inspiring, they are going to be expand. Okay, the diaphragm goes downward, then the chest becomes upward and forward, so thoracic cavity increases, lungs become expanded, and then air taken into the body. So this process is called as the inspiration. Now exactly opposite to that is nothing but the expiration. Okay, now you know the expiration, we releasing the CO2. Okay, at this time the different mechanism occurs. Okay, you can feel that when we are expiring, the pressure is on your stomach or in your belly region, because what we are doing, we are creating pressure on the lungs because the diaphragm is going to be expand. In the another diagram we have seen that in the expiration the diaphragm is going to expand. That means it goes upward on the lung side. Okay, and at the same time the intercostal muscles of the ribs inside, it is going to be compressed, so that at one side diaphragm creates pressure on lungs, and at surrounding side the ribs creating pressure on the lungs. So from both the pressures the lungs are going to be compressed, and when lungs are going to compress, whatever the CO2 is present in the lungs, that is going to exhale from lungs to the trachea, trachea to the pharynx, pharynx to the nasal chamber, and through the nose it is going out of the body. So CO2 expels from the body. By this process, at that time diaphragm is expanded, thoracic cavity, ribs are going to be compressed, lungs are going to be compressed, and then the air is going to exhale out of the body. So this is called as the expiration. The process of inspiration, taking air, one inspiration and one expiration, cumulatively both will make one breath. Okay, and normal person has 12 to 20 breaths in resting condition, and abnormal persons below 12 and above 25. Resting condition, if you are working, your breathing must be more. Okay, but I am talking about when you are in the resting condition. This is about the breathing process. Now coming to the next part, that is external respiration. External respiration, this is the first part where the exchange of gases at the alveoli level. Okay, we have seen up to the alveoli. In the lungs, bronchioles are divided ending into the alveoli. Alveoli, it is a bunch of alveoli, okay, like a grapes. So each of these alveoli, it is surrounded by capillaries. Okay, you can see one picture on your screen. Okay, it is a single alveoli. Centrally you can see a white part, white alveoli is there. It is surrounded by a capillaries. Okay, one capillary is there surrounding to the entire alveoli. Okay, there are some parts we are going to see. Internally the alveoli is having a membrane called as alveolar membrane. Okay, and inside to that alveolar membrane there is a fluid. Okay, that is called as the surface fluid. Okay, just outside to that membrane there is a capillary present. Okay, both pulmonary artery and pulmonary veins are there. At one side pulmonary artery capillary is there, and at another side pulmonary vein capillary is there. So capillary is there. The inner membrane of the capillary and the membrane of the alveoli both make a respiratory membrane. Okay, respiratory membrane I am talking because in this membrane, in these two membranes, the gases are going to be exchanged. So these are called as respiratory membrane. So we are going to see the external respiration or exchange of gases between the in the alveolar level. Okay, so first concentrate on the alveoli, central alveoli. Okay, that is open into the lungs, then bronchus, then trachea, then it is going to be pharynx, then nasal chamber and nose. So air coming into the nose, nostril, nasal cavity, pharynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and come to the alveoli. Okay, you can see the red arrows which shows or which represent the oxygen entry into the alveoli. Okay, in this structure red arrows will show the oxygen entry into the alveoli. Then the blue arrows will represent the CO2 release into the alveoli. Okay, blue arrows are there. Okay, you can see. First we will see the entry of oxygen. Okay, when we are inspiring the air along with air, oxygen is entry into the body through the nasal chamber, in the pharynx it goes to the trachea, then it is going to the larynx, then it goes to the trachea, from the trachea it goes to the bronchi to bronchioles, and then comes to this alveoli. And in the alveoli, by the red arrows you can see the oxygen entering into the cavity. And this oxygen by the respiratory membrane, we have already seen which is respiratory membrane, it diffuses into the capillaries. Okay, and in the capillaries deoxygenated blood is there. Okay, blood is there in that capillaries. So that oxygen is going to enter into that capillary and it is attached with that cells or this blood. In the blood RBCs are there, and in that hemoglobin is there, and that oxygen is going to combine with the hemoglobin called as oxyhemoglobin, and when it combines, that blood cells are traveling along the capillary and it reaches to the pulmonary vein and it becomes red. Okay, you can see in this structure that cells becomes red. Okay, RBC. This is oxygenated, and through the pulmonary vein it goes to the other parts of the body. So this is called as the inspiration and transportation of oxygen. This is the one way. Now CO2 is produced in our body and it is unwanted to us. We need to be eliminated out of the body. So CO2 produced in the body, it is again traveling along with that hemoglobin, same hemoglobin which travel along with the oxygen, which travels along with the oxygen. When it comes back, it along with this CO2 it is also, and that hemoglobin is called as carboxyhemoglobin because carbon dioxide is along with. Then in the capillaries, that pink color cells you can see, this is having CO2 along with that, and it becomes then blue. Okay, and now blue arrows, because CO2, that hemoglobin is going to be release CO2 into the alveoli. Okay, you can see from the capillaries CO2 along with the hemoglobin is there, and that cells release the CO2 into the alveoli, and through the alveoli it goes to the lungs, then to the trachea, in the larynx, pharynx, then nasal chamber and nose, and out of the body. So this is the simply mechanism. Now question is that why the oxygen is going from alveoli to capillary, and why CO2 is going from capillary to alveoli? What is the reason behind it? It has we know that we need oxygen and we doesn't need an CO2. So we are taking oxygen and we are releasing CO2. But the body mechanism doesn't like that. It doesn't function like that. Okay, it needs some of the reasons for that. We know that every gases travels from higher concentration or higher pressure to the lower pressure. That means where pressure is higher and at one side pressure is low. So gases travels from higher pressure to lower pressure. So in case of carbon dioxide, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide inside the capillaries or inside the blood is 45 mmHg. Remember, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide inside the capillary it is, or inside the blood, it is 45 mmHg, and partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the alveoli it is nothing but the 40 mmHg. So 45 mmHg is more than the 40 mmHg. That's why the CO2 is travel from capillary to the alveoli. Now coming to the oxygen. Okay, why oxygen travels from alveoli to capillary or in the blood? Because the partial pressure of oxygen into the air or into the alveoli is 104 mmHg, while the partial pressure of the oxygen inside the capillary or in the blood it is 40 mmHg. So 104 is more than that of the 40 mmHg. So that's why oxygen is travels from alveoli to capillary. So here the exchange of gases takes place. That means from air oxygen is entered into the blood, and from blood CO2 is entered into the air. So there is an exchange of gases. We need oxygen, so we taken it. We don't need an CO2, so we release it into the alveoli, and from that respiratory tract it goes outward projection. So this is called as the external respiration. We know we have seen the breathing, inspiration, expiration. This mechanism is under this. When we are inspiring, oxygen getting in, or oxygen it is going into the capillaries, and by traveling it goes to the every body part. Then CO2 produced inside the body, so the concentration is more in the body. So it is along with the hemoglobin, it comes to the capillary, then capillary it goes to the alveoli, and from the respiratory tract it goes outward. Okay, this is about the external respiration. Okay, then two parts are remaining, that is internal respiration and the cellular respiration, that we will see in the next lecture.